In today's show, we discuss, do ghosts actually exist?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo, and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you are keeping safe and well.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, I am still here, still trucking. Woke up this morning alive, which is a good way to start the day, I suspect. As good as any.
That's actually quite good with the theme of our topic today.
Oh, yes, indeed. Must be yes.
Okay, we'll go straight in. I'm not going to ask you to say hi to our audience because you obviously don't like to. I'll say hi to the audience. Hi, audience. Now, today's topic was actually chosen by me because I do believe in ghosts, but you don't. Is that right?
That is absolutely 100% correct. I don't believe in ghosts. It doesn't fit in with my worldview at all, even though I do believe in reincarnation and I believe in life after death, or at least the survival of consciousness after death. So you would have thought that someone like me who believes that the universe was created and didn't just pop out of nothing by accident, which I still say is a ridiculous belief. I believe in all sorts of things. You would have thought, therefore, that I would believe in ghosts, but it doesn't fit in with my worldview because it doesn't fit in with what I understand happens to consciousness when we die, and for various other reasons too. I just don't believe in ghosts. Doesn't mean I'd be happy to spend the night in a haunted house. I would avoid if I could, but that's just me being a little girly or weak and not really wanting to do that because I get creeped out easily. I mean, at my age, and this is a horrible thing to have to admit in public, I still leave the lights on after I've just watched a horror movie. Which I mean,
So what's that?
there are very few horror movies. There are very few horror movies now which are proper horror movies, which actually freak me out. A lot of them are these slasher or gore type things, which are not really horror. They don't really sort of make you sort of feel scared or frightened.
They're just slasher movies.
They're just a horrid slasher movies. I don't really mean a great deal. But every now and then you do get a good one, and when you stumble on a good one, then for a while you leave the lights on until sort of you can man up again and remind yourself that another good show would be for us to sit down and actually think about, why do we watch horror movies? Why do we like being scared? Why do we go on roller coasters? Why? It's but I mean, that's a distraction now. But it makes me wonder, what is it about that experience? And in horror movies, why is there always a little like children singing? There's always this kind of like sing-song thing.
But that's
why? What's all that about?
Hollywood. We're going to digress here about ghosts. But Hollywood are doing that to create a sense of fun. Because because they then change the scene to fear, so that you are startled more by the creation of a non-tense environment, because you're starting from because if you think about it for a moment, right? If you walk into a creepy house, you're on tenterhooks. You're already in a state of fight or flight in mode. So you're aware, you're almost preparing yourself for something's going to happen. So Hollywood have created the sense of, normality. This is fine. Because when a jump scene then appears after a similar scene of comfort, you're at home, the kids are playing, you've got no fear whatsoever. So the fear factor creates a bigger impact, and that's what they're trying to achieve. So they've hit on a formula which creates a calmness up front first, which is the children singing or playing, and then all of a sudden the jump scene has occurred. But I'm going to counter that. But we have seen so many movies now that are like that. We now have tuned into the fact, the child's singing, something bad's going to happen. See, we've already now sort of immunized ourselves against that feeling because we've seen enough movies and we know what Hollywood are doing for us to respond in this way.
I'm not certain that you're right, and I'll tell you why. If you think back to even the latest one, which wasn't particularly good, the film It, from the book written by Stephen King. And there was an earlier It with Stephen Curry. Was this Stephen? I can't remember his first name.
I can't either, actually.
The guy,
It's a good book, anyway.
Yeah, but even better film, I felt, with, I've forgotten his first name, the chap in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Anyway.
Yeah.
He was the clown, remember? And then there was a one a couple of years ago. When the clown appears, when the clown appears, there is this kind of sing-song thing going on. And it's menacing straight away because the clown is menacing.
Yeah.
So there isn't that what you were saying, that there's a sense of normality and the children are playing and everything is okay, and then it suddenly starts going awry. No, I disagree. I think in a horror movie, when you hear the sing-song thing, it's because the demon is there or the ghost is there or something's, it's already gone wrong. It's not a good thing in a horror movie. You don't want to hear children singing, when you're in a horror movie. That's not a good sign at all. A good sign would probably be horses clattering on the cobblestones and the sun shining, and that's the good bit. That's when things are normal and you can sit back and relax. It's when it starts turning a bit dark and a bit gloomy, and then that horrible music starts. That's when you know there's trouble.
No, true.
In my opinion, anyway.
Okay, well, that's Hollywood. They've it's almost like Hollywood have put it in our psyche. A lot of people know horror stories based on the movie industry. The movies and things we watch on TV, of course, they have an influence on us. And they because we have no point of reference, a lot of us may not have ever heard of a ghost or seen a ghost, but we've seen it on TV. Hence why we now know what they are, and people start to believe that little bumps in the night could be a ghost. Now, where I believe in ghosts is more on the fact that we as humans have, we got a few senses. We've got 5 known senses that we're aware of, sight, sound, touch, taste, and gosh, what's the last one? Anyway, 5 senses. And
sorry, what did you say?
it's 5 senses. Sight, sound, hearing.
Yeah. Smelling.
No, sound is hearing. Smell. Oh, smell. That was it.
Smell and taste.
Yeah. So, and those are the ones that we're all aware of. However, there are others. I've spoken about this before, where we sense something, and we humans have just no longer tuned into these other abilities. People often refer to them as a sixth sense. Some people can tune into it, where most of us don't. And where this seems to happen is a lot of children, very young children, see things that we as adults will dismiss because they're more tuned into it than us. Because we've got older, we forget about it. A bit like the discussion that we had on a previous show about reincarnation, where children have lived a life previously, adults almost dismiss it. Whereas in this case, they are seeing things that we as adults have tuned out. We're no longer receptive to. Dogs the same. Dogs and other animals will bark at areas, maybe not one dog, 2, 3 dogs at an area that we humans look at, there's nothing there. But they're seeing something, they're sensing something is there that we have no idea about. And because we then can't see it with our normal senses, we almost dismiss it. We've all been in situations, I dare say, where you visit a house that you weren't aware of. Someone could have died, but you feel uneasy and you can't explain it. And it's like, oh, I get the shivers here. What's going on? I don't understand. And a lot of people feel that. Where does that come from? These are people that are not even linked to one another, not spoken to one another, but when they go to that place, they all exhibit the same feeling. Now, where's that come from? Is it the place that's having this effect? And what is it? So that's why I'm I am a believer in ghosts, and I'm not dismissing it, because we are lacking in understanding certain interdimensional things. We've seen too many accounts of it to dismiss it out of hand. So that's why I do believe in ghosts.
We've seen many accounts of Loch Ness Monster. I don't believe there's a Loch Ness Monster. We've seen many accounts of Sasquatch and yet another cryptoids. I don't believe those things are there. We never find any physical, incontrovertible evidence. I mean, these creatures must be pooing somewhere, for goodness sakes. They must be eating things. And how is it that they happen to eat everything completely, totally, and utterly, and never leave any remains behind? It's not believable. In the same way, there are all these eyewitness accounts and things. In fact, I'd say far more credible evidence of UFOs. But of course, UFOs exist. We know they exist because we can see them. Now, what they are is where there's an argument. But the fact that there are objects in that fly which we can't identify, that's a fact. That's solid. We can go on the internet and find plenty of videos showing us objects that are to this day unidentified. The difference is, when it comes to ghosts, there isn't even that kind of evidence. We don't have any.
I have to digress there, because there is. There's plenty of evidence, and there's plenty of photographic evidence that cannot be explained, like UFO, as you just cited. A lot of it can. You rightly say, it's an unidentified object which can be explained in some way, where we've seen images, we've seen videos of actions that animals, children, we had one today I showed you, well, you showed me, I think, where the children responded in a really, really fearful way. And it was two children, weren't they, in that video clip that we saw. For the benefit of our viewers, our listeners, not our viewers, our listeners, what we saw a video of two children just sitting in a house facing one another. They were just playing or eating on a table. Behind them was a doorway which was dark, and one of the children was looking at the doorway and thought, "Oh, what's that?" and got really scared, really scared. And the second child, apologies, who had her back to the doorway, was laughing at her sister for getting so scared. She then turned around in the doorway and looked and freaked as well, and responded in the same manner, really extreme manner. Now, both children saw something, even though there was nothing there, that the parent who happened to be filming them while they were eating couldn't see. So that's a really strong example where two people independently hadn't spoke to each other, saw something behind them in the doorway that wasn't captured on camera, but they both saw it and responded in a similar manner. So that was a really graphic.
The reason I sent it to you is sort of like a trap, which you seem to have fallen into. Is because I actually saw what they were scared of. And I said to you, it's a case of pareidolia. Now, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but pareidolia is the human ability to make faces out of objects. And if you look properly and closely into the corner of the darkened kitchen, you will see what looks very much like a ghost face. But you have to sort of look at it, if you like, and make the connection. And that's what you have to make the pareidolia. And adults, probably several adults looking at it, fail to see it, especially if you're just watching it as a video and you don't stop it and look at it as an image, as a picture. So that's why I sent it to you, because I felt that afterwards, what I can do is actually draw out the face, and then once I've drawn out the face, you go, oh, and then you will see.
But you're planting the seed now.
It's not a question of planting the seed. I'm saying that's what they saw, because first of all, if there are, let's say there are no ghosts, let's do a thought experiment. There aren't any ghosts, okay? Ghosts are not real. Okay, so what scared them? Okay, this is what I'm saying, this is what scared them, because something scared them.
Okay. For the benefit of our listeners, shall we put an image of what we're talking about on our website? So
I'm going to put the video.
Even better.
I'm going to filch the video.
Is this on our Facebook page then?
I'm going to stick into our Facebook page, because we haven't done that before, and I think that's been a really great entree into our... Oh, that was very pretentious. Entree. Good Lord. Good grief. Yikes.
Okay.
No, I'll be eating snails next. Okay, forget it. Actually, I love snails. I love eating snails.
Oh dear.
Right. Where am I? Where are we?
Video, yeah.
Video. Yes, we're going to do that. We're going to stick that on our Facebook page. Just that little clip, not the
Yeah.
whole thing. I'll extract the relevant bits.
It'd be good if our listeners would comment on that and see what they think. Do they see the face in the doorway or not? It's something intriguing. So please go to our Facebook page, which is obviously facebook.com/Tony and Teo. So if you look for that page, Tony and Teo, TAYO, you will find the page of what we're looking at and what we're describing.
That was a little racist. Why don't you have to spell Tony?
Oh, well.
That's how these modern snowflake millennials think. Oh, you didn't spell Tony. Oh, that's really racist. No, I'm just putting your I don't who cares.
Tony with a Y, TONY, and AND, Tayo, TAYO. Okay, I hope that's clear as mud. People have heard that.
Could have been Tony with an I, to be honest with you, in this day and age. Good Lord.
Could have done indeed.
Right, so sorry. You said there's photographic evidence. I poo-poo that. I've never ever seen any photographic evidence which couldn't be explained quite easily. And by the way, more than that, and which is one reason why I don't believe in ghosts, more than that, what would we be photographing? Are you saying there's an assembly of atoms which the ghosts put together into an image in such a density that light can actually bounce off it and into the camera? Is that what you're saying? Because a ghost obviously is not a corporeal entity. It's so where are the atoms? How is it assembling those atoms to make light bounce off it? And what's the density of that? So if you say there's a mist or something, that's quite a feat, because the mist has to form against meteorological conditions and local meteorological conditions, and has to remain more or less corporate, which is to say acting as one for a length of time. And why is it assembling itself into anything that's even close to resembling, in many cases, anything close to human? What does it need eyes for? There are no retinal cones and rods. It doesn't have, it doesn't eat, doesn't need a mouth, doesn't need a nose, doesn't breathe. Why would it assemble those things? I don't understand. And then again, most importantly, what are the physical characteristics which allow light to bounce off it in such a manner that the camera can capture it, and we can then say we've captured a ghost? And we've got millions of cameras all over the world, or CCTV, and all we ever see is things which are being moved by other things. I'm sorry, I mean, like there's this
objects moving as opposed to
objects move. Yeah, exactly.
Entities. Yeah, that's more likely to be a ghost.
Well, is it though? Is it? First of all, fishing wire is invisible to camera.
Yeah.
Most times, right? Even under good lighting. So, and definitely when these videos are made, they're made in bad lighting. So going back to our famous Occam's razor, the simplest and most straightforward solution is that it's a flipping hose, and it's easily replicatable by anyone with a fishing wire. Now, where are the instances of things which can't be replicated? I mean, I've never even seen anybody even suggest that there's such a video out there, and you certainly didn't send me any to look at to say, well, how do you explain this then? And I suggest because there aren't any. Sometimes there are stories of ghosts, which are also good. We all love a good ghost story. I don't know, you had another good story.
I've got a good one as well, but yeah, go on.
And one of them is this flight. I can't remember. Actually, if you search for my name, Tayo Boy, on the internet, it keeps cropping up where I made a comment on this. And this is from years ago. I never realized that the comment would last this long.
Oh, wow. What did you
I know.
say?
I made a comment about this captain of a plane that went down, and the parts were used in other planes. And every now and then the captain appears where those parts have been used. And I pointed out that there was nothing in the entire story that could be confirmed. The story was told in such a way that you couldn't confirm anything. You couldn't confirm that the flight had gone down. Why didn't you know the flight number?
Yeah, there was too much lacking of information.
There was too much lacking. The event, it sounded great until you started thinking, right, I want to investigate this. What's the captain's name? Captain Blair. What did he work for? We don't know. What flight was he on? We don't know. What other flights has he been appeared? We don't know. What were the names of the witnesses? We don't know.
That's no good. Yeah,
see, it's no good. And we get stories but that story is going round and round and round and round and has a life of its own as an urban legend, basically.
That's storytelling. We've had that. I mean, okay, let me ask you this. With religion, okay, as a whole, you could, if you don't believe in ghosts, then do you believe in religion? There's no evidence at all of any religion. It's all from people's description. And all the religions imply that there is a deity, a god, and it's been explained by word of mouth. There's no evidence.
I believe the universe was created. I said so earlier. I believe the universe was created, and obviously that means there is a creator. But I don't believe in religion per se. I used to be a Buddhist, but I'm sort of not any longer. I used to be a Catholic until I was 12 years old. I'm not any longer. And I know the answer to your question is no. I think I've pretty much explained the universe to myself, which is to my own satisfaction. I've explained the universe to my own satisfaction, which is why I say I've got my own worldview. And ghosts are not really a part of that. I've got a story which I've told it once before. I think I told it in our reincarnation episode. Now, what's interesting about this story is that I can't explain it till today. I even in full recognition of what I said about not believing in ghosts and my worldview and so on. I was living in a boarding house and there was a kitchen. Sorry, this is back in Lagos.
Okay, in Nigeria. Okay.
In Nigeria. But basically, rather than say I was living in a boarding house, I was staying with my aunts because my parents were very busy and my aunt lived closer to my school and all that. And she had a whole lot of kids staying with her. She was a matronly kind of woman. She had a lot of kids staying with her. And for me, it was a fun thing because instead of being alone, I was with a whole bunch of other kids.
Oh, cool.
Now, exactly. Now, the girls were... Feminists are going to like this. The girls are responsible for getting the food ready.
Okay.
And the oldest girl was the one most responsible and everything. So, in time for our evening meal, she went into the kitchen. I don't know, I can't remember. She didn't really had a candle, or maybe there was electricity had cut out or something. And we heard a scream and a crash, and she came running out. And we said, "What's the matter?" And she burst into tears. She was trembling from head to foot. She said, "My mother startled me." And we were like, "Okay, your mother startled you? Well, first of all, why are you startled?" She's just standing there in the dark, in the gloom. We're like, "Yeah, okay. Well, you left her there." That's polite. And there was no one there. There was no one in the kitchen. We never saw anything. All we had was the evidence, if you like, was this girl who was standing there trembling from head to foot with tears streaming down her eyes, really, terribly distraught. And then we said, well, maybe you're thinking about home. And, but the adults, because I was young at the time, I think I was like 13 or 14. The adults gathered. How old was she? Should have been like 17, 18. She was older, or even not 19 or maybe even 20. She was much older than I was. I remember her name, by the way, so I won't say it. And the adults gathered around, don't worry about it, everything's fine. Anyway, eventually she calmed down. Eventually, food got sorted out and everything. We all went to bed. About 2 or 3 in the morning, there's a knocking on the door, and very unusual for the household. We're all sleepy. So if the girls organize the food, the boys are responsible for security. So it was up to us to get up and attend to this because we didn't know what it was.
Someone knocked in the middle of the night.
Someone knocked in the middle of the night, so we boys were like, "Okay, boys, this is your thing, man. You go and sort it out." We went, and there were these visitors from this girl's village. Come to tell her that her mother had died. Now, you see, the thing about that is that unlike the ghost story, the story of the captain, I actually have witnesses because we have everybody who was in the house that day. So I got loads and loads of witnesses who were there and who can back me up on every single thing I'm saying. I can't explain that, but I still don't think it was the ghost in the traditional sense of the word.
What do you mean
because
in
I just
traditional
don't believe.
sense? You've got to define what you mean by traditional sense.
Well, the traditional sense is that the things that appear and are actually there, so to speak, as opposed to a psychic impression to someone who is not really in the moment, who is doing something by rote, who is doing something that they do every single day, and their mind is sort of more receptive, if you like, because they're not concentrating exactly on what they're doing. If you do the same old thing every single day, it's like more like muscle memories operating, and your mind isn't really in that moment. I mean, it sort of is, but halfway there and halfway not. I want you to be able to respond, but in a way, that is why it is a good idea. If your child starts saying things about having lived before, it's a good idea to put them into the back of the car and take them for a long ride, because that's where, when they get to chatting, they get into this kind of halfway state where they're kind of like half in and half out, and then actually start saying things, and you can just listen to them and keep that going and record the heck out of it and send me the recording, because I'm doing research in that field. So yeah, that's what I think it is.
So do you not feel then that a ghost as such isn't actually a ghost, or it's somebody sensing something? I mean, let's be honest, how could your friend have felt their mother and then only discovering later that the mother passed away? It's do you see what I mean? It's like an essence. It's projection. They've seen an image. We as humans may have that ability when we pass, and there's that crossover period where our consciousness, which could be classed as anything. We don't know what a consciousness is, but it makes us as humans that we are. That is still lingering, and some people attribute that as a ghost, when in actual fact, it could be our consciousness that is now moved away from the physical and gone back to wherever consciousness happens to be. So that's a separate topic for a separate argument, but that could be what ghosts are. It could be actually our consciousness as we leave the physical body.
No, it couldn't be what ghosts are, because ghosts are located in space and time, and I'm saying that they're not. That this thing that this girl sensed is not located in space and time in this way.
Okay.
Have you ever thought of someone? Have you ever thought? Well, I'll explain. Have you ever thought of someone that you haven't thought of in a very long time? Years or at least months, and then you think, oh yeah, and actually you think about them for what I would describe as for no good reason. It just popped into your mind, and then you get a letter from them or you get a call from them. You think, you're not going to believe this. I was just thinking about you.
Of course.
All right, so that's not exactly a ghost. That person is still alive. No ghost, no ghost stuff was involved there. What I think is like some kind of synchronicity where the two consciousnesses are thinking about each other, or one is thinking about the other, and somehow the other consciousness becomes aware of it. So when the mother passed, as I think most people would, you would for a while think about, I think if I were to die, I'd be, my poor wife, or my poor daughter, the family, my loved ones. I'll be thinking about them and hoping they're not going to suffer suffer my passing too much. And I hope I wouldn't show up in my mind's eye and find that they're actually celebrating and saying the whole culture is dead. that would be very, very annoying. But when your mind reaches out to them, if they're receptive, they may feel that just the same way you feel about a friend that you haven't seen for a long time. That's not ghostly stuff.
Isn't that could be what ghosts actually are? We're not talking of an apparition that appears. I'm not talking about that.
Well, I'm talking about apparitions, you see. So when you say ghost, I'm talking specifically about apparitions, about, the headless horseman, about people rattling their chains around and things like that's what I mean. Right, so if you're not talking about that, then I don't know what conversation we're having really.
Right, okay. Let me actually, you've said a wonderful story. I've got one. I've got to tell this for our listeners as well, which which happened to my grandfather. Now, when he was a young man, obviously my surname is Italian, he's in Italy, and he lived in a little village far away from the main city. And back then, obviously, they had very little electricity. It was only dotted around in certain villages. And his wife, my gran, was pregnant and she needed some medicine. But because the village they were in was very small, he had to get on his push bike and ride up a side of a mountain in the dark to the next village to collect the medicine for his wife, my grandmother. And what he did, he got on the bike, and he was a young man, and he went on this village road, and all he had was a dynamo light on his bike. Now, for the benefit of young people who might be listening to this, a dynamo light only works while you're pedaling. If you stop, the light goes off, because in them days, that was the way the light worked. So you had to pedal to keep the bike moving and the light on the front would stay on. So he rode to the next village, and it was dusky sort of time, to pick up the medicine and come back. Now, when he went, he was going up. As he was going around this particular corner of the mountainside, now imagine there's nobody there. It's pitch black. Well, not pitch black, it was dusky, and he's got this light on, and he hears this ching, ching, ching sound. And he thinks, whoa, something wrong with my bike. That was his first thought. So he thought, oh, so he stopped the bike. The light went off, obviously, on the dynamo light. So it's pitch black. Well, not pitch black, but dusky. And he's hearing out, but he hears nothing. He goes, oh, it must be my chain, because I can't hear anything. So he carries on pedaling. And he goes around the corner, didn't hear it. Went back, got the medicine, was coming back the other way. And as he got round that corner again, he heard ching, ching, ching again. So again, he stopped. Thought, is it my chain? And he stopped. Again, no sound. And he thought, this is silly. And as he was about to pedal, he heard it again. This time he's stationary. Ching, 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 really loudly. And he, obviously no light, panicking, got on his bike and literally shot down the mountainside, and the light was burning bright on the front while he was pedaling crazily to get from that, because he didn't know what that sound was. He brought it back to his wife, my grandmother, and she was like, my goodness me, you're white as a sheet. What the heck? You know, what happened? He goes, I heard this noise. I didn't understand it. It was only me there, pitch black. And this noise was a chain sound. And they were, a bit concerned. Now, obviously, young people, they then, the next day, they mentioned that story to one of the older people in the village. And he said, he goes, were you going just round the corner, round the hill up there? And he said, yeah. And that's where I heard the sound. He said, yeah. He said, a few years ago, a young man was riding on his bike up there, and his chain had come off. And as he was on the side of the road, changing the chain, a horse and cart came round the corner, which was that bend, didn't see him, and he got killed. And you heard the chain as he was trying to fix it, as you happened to be round that corner. Now, you might think, well, this is just an old wives' tale. It's a glorified story. But this was told to me by my grandfather many years ago. And I remember it to this day because it chilled me at the time. And it came from him and his personal experience. Now, obviously, we can dismiss it and think, it was dark. He was just imagining it. But when they explain the same story to other people from the village, those other people told him exactly what had happened previously to that young man who lost his life to a horse and cart that had come round the corner. So how do we explain things like this? Do we just dismiss it out of hand? Or is there something more?
I would like to do some primary research on this. Well, I don't know primary because I don't think I'm going to go to some eerie, haunted place in Italy. That's not a general direction. I'm a black guy. I know what happens to black people in horror movies, don't you? They're the first to go. So I'm not going to flipping on myself. But no, seriously. We're always laughing in my family about what we as black people would and wouldn't do. Because Going hunting ghosts isn't like anything.
What a nonsense example. Come on.
What I would like to do is, okay, this chap who died, course ran over and yada yada. Are there any records of that? That would be still number one, because it sounds like an urban legend to me. So that would be a great start. I can't interview your grandparents, unfortunately,
No.
I assume. But people in the village, when did it stop? When did such occurrences stop? Have they stopped? Can we replicate it today? See, this sort of thing. This is what proper ghost hunting would be to me. But apart from that, what I would say is that this is more of a paranormal story than an actual ghost story. Because I really need to be very particular. I assumed that we were talking about the same thing. Turns out we're not.
Right.
When you say ghosts, I mean apparitions. You see? It seems that you mean paranormal.
Yes.
Do I believe in the paranormal? Obviously, I believe in reincarnation, for God's sake. So how does that work?
See, that's a bit narrow. Ghosts is quite a large remit, if you think about it. Ghosts aren't necessarily just the visual.
I've always meant by ghosts. I've always meant By ghosts, I've always meant apparitions of some sort.
Right. So, okay. I mean, I still believe in those. I do believe in apparitions, although not as strongly as I do in the paranormal, because I believe that there's, like you just said about the essence that people witness. It's a different dimension that we maybe haven't learned to read and understand and see and feel in not traditional terms, but it's there. These apparitions that you're describing, where you physically see them, they're only there for a short period because the person or object that's passed is trying to communicate back in a realm that we, as humans who are alive, can then see. And it only lasts for short periods. So the apparition, I agree with you. I'm more skeptical with those because of the arguments you put through earlier. How and why do they then manifest? What's their purpose? But I feel that when they do come, it's a difficult thing for them to do, if they exist, but they do, that they only do it in short bursts because it's so difficult to do. And it could be based on feeling, emotions, just happened, not an ongoing thing, or somebody's been traumatized because the death has been really, really horrific. And
in my worldview, we don't have ghosts because that's not the way that the world is. I believe, as I've said before, that this world is a playground and we're just here to play. When we are not here, we cast off the garb of the roles that we're acting. So you are acting as Tony Fasudo, I'm acting as Tayo Boya. But obviously, I'm not really Tayo Boya and you're not really Tony Fasudo. We're not even really human. We are consciousness, whatever that ultimately is. And once we have passed, we go back to what we really are. And much the same way that we could be in, let's say, a movie or a play, and we could be acting in that movie and play. And when the director yells cut, we become who we really are, with things that concerned us a few moments ago whilst we were in the play or in the movie no longer concern us now. In that sense, if you were killed in that film or that play, you really wouldn't be interested in rushing back onto the stage or onto set to comfort your loved ones who were mourning your departure.
Why?
Because they were acting, and now that you've returned to your real life, you can see that they're acting. Would you rush back onto the stage if the director, let's say you were playing Macbeth or something, I don't know, the king.
So basically, you're saying that you come off and you say, they're all acting, they're not real. It's all a farce. It's
all a farce. And so maybe I don't know. Maybe some people have got special empathy or something. Would be like, it's a farce. You don't need to be crying. And they try to communicate that as, look, it's fine. Do you remember when, because I gave you, I've sent you lots of material about reincarnation. Remember what the children say? Children say things like, dying is easy, it's like, it's living that's hard. Because that part of it, going back to that is not the stress and is not the thing that we should be, if you like, worried about. What we should be worried about is life here on earth, which is really difficult. And the other thing one of the children said was when the mother said, how did you know when I was a little girl I was riding on my yellow tricycle? How could you have known that? He said very dismissively, oh, of the windows in heaven, of course. Like, don't you remember? He was like 3 or 4 years old at the time, and he thought it was a silly question because didn't everybody know there are windows in heaven? So you don't come from that one statement. I've taken a lot away. I've taken away that the entities don't come. They don't travel to Earth. They're not geolocated on Earth. That somehow from that side of things, they can see what's happening. So
maybe they if they are consciousness, if we all are all conscious and we're only acting while we're here, do what we do while we're here, do they not have consequences then?
No, how can they? So remember when I said I don't believe in karma, I stopped being a Buddhist because I stopped believing in karma. So if you think about it, it looks like karma. And I can understand why people believe in karma, because it looks very much like it. The only way that I'm going to agree for Tony Fusillo to murder me is that one day I will get to murder Tony Fusillo, because we're playing. So today you play the murderer. Well, that's all very nice for you, but don't forget you're going to be slicing my neck with your Mac the knife type stiletto, shoving in my back. So that's because I would love to call Tony the knife Fusillo.
No,
as you know. No, so I'm saying you play the mafia boss and I'm your victim. That's all well and good. But why would I agree to be just victim? I wouldn't just agree to be victim. I'd like, well, okay, you do me this life, but in 3 or 4 lifetimes, I'm going to do you back. And then we shake hands on it and it's a done deal. That looks like karma. That looks like what you do unto others, others get to do unto you. But actually, it's an agreement. And that's my position now, that I think of the world as a playground, and you can make it anything you want because it's a playground that we can invest in it what we like. You can take it seriously. You can take it. What's the opposite of seriously? Lightly, lightheartedly. It really is what you make of it, because it's up to you to make it what you want it to be. That's how I see things now.
Okay. And then the point is, what's the point of us being here?
We're playing. We're having fun. This is supposed to be fun. And if it isn't fun, either that is what you want to get out of it, or you're misunderstanding what we're doing here. Because ignorance, of course, is the primary pain point. But it's meant to be, or it is fun. Even suffering is fun. I don't know. Did you ever do this when you were super hormonally charged teenager? Did you ever read? You probably laugh at me now. Did you ever read anything romantic or sad or heroic, and you sit there with the book and put yourself into that mind of the character in the book, and then go through the throes of agony emotionally of that character? Did you ever do that? Because I did. Yeah. Wasn't it fun? I mean, why would you make... It's almost the same question I asked. Yeah, why do we watch horror movies? Right, doesn't make sense.
But let me just step in here. But you did it because you're aware that it is only for a brief period, and you then come out. Now, we don't know. We're here.
When we're coming, we are aware. When we're coming,
maybe. I mean, that's an interesting viewpoint. When we're coming, we're aware. But when we're in it, we've got no recollection.
Otherwise, we wouldn't take it seriously. If we had recollection, if we had serious recollection, it wouldn't be that much fun, because we wouldn't take it seriously. If we know we're acting, it's kind of pointless. You can just stop acting.
So how have you discovered that you're now acting when everyone else doesn't believe that and thinks that this
is... It's just conclusions I've drawn from listening to the children. Every one of the children said something to me which was totally unexpected, which was there's no such thing. They implied, they didn't say it, point blank, but they did imply there's no such thing as karma. And I couldn't get over that. What do you mean there's no karma? We can see it everywhere. And I had to explain that to myself. Why are all the children quite insistent that there's nothing like karma? the bad children come back into delightful lives, delightful children come back into bad lives. What's all that about? There needs to be a proper explanation.
What is that about?
What is it about is that they're just playing a different role. You don't get rewarded for being good, and you don't get punished for being bad, because you're only acting being good and you're only acting being bad.
What is the point? This is the
Fun.
quick file of the fun. That's fun. All it is. Fun.
All it is, fun. You're having fun. So supposedly you're having fun. It doesn't feel like fun quite often, but supposedly it's fun. And it's the ultimate VR game anyway, isn't it?
So this is now leading on to another question that we've already discussed. Are we, as our consciousness in this realm, which is our reality, what we think is this, are we therefore then in like a matrix? Because this is all this is.
I'm pretty certain we are. And I'm pretty certain that I can even explain things like, I believe I can explain things like the age of the universe. Like, why does it seem, how do you reconcile young Earth clocks, such as salination of the sea, with old Earth clocks, such as distant starlight? And one answer could be that the creator or creators, I don't know why I always say it's just one, that the creator or creators created everything from out of a black hole. Now, if you create something out of a black hole, inside the black hole, time is close to standing still, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as you move it towards the edge of the black hole, it starts to speed up. Mm-hmm. So if you brought out the stars and distant, objects in the universe, if you brought them out first from that point of view, and then you brought out the Earth last, the Earth would be young and everything else would be old. And older and older and older as you feed out from the Earth. Do you see?
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I can see that point of view.
And now we are looking at. And now I wish I could give you this is what I was talking about references before this show began. That we really need a reference for this. I read so many things I sometimes forget where I've read it. Oh, someone is already doing some mathematics on this and modeling to indicate, and has already, I believe, started to indicate that the Earth, unexpectedly, and our solar system really is towards the center of the universe, which is you wouldn't expect. You'd think, I've always been taught that we're nowhere near the center of the universe. We're just.
You mean of the galaxy as a whole?
I'm talking about the entire universe.
Well, we don't know that, do we?
Well, this guy's mathematics is he's trying to show exactly that now. Okay. That he believes that we really are near the center of the universe, Earth, which contradicts everything we've been taught and to think, and that we're in a sort of like on an irrelevant planet, in an irrelevant galaxy, in an irrelevant part of an irrelevant universe, so to speak, because it's all Big Bang and everything. But he's actually convinced that he can show mathematically that that's not the case. Which, if he can, and we can look it up. Which, if he can, that's very interesting, because that's what you'd expect from what I'm saying about this being born out of a black hole and taking care of our time discrepancies like that. So those stars out there, or many of those stars out there, seem to be billions of years old. Probably really are, but our sea doesn't show that we've been around for 4.5 billion years. The planet Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years, because the sea should be a lot saltier than it is. So there's that. There's other things as well.
Okay. Well, we're done. Okay, let's bring back on point here. I mean, that's interesting, and that we can do a whole show again on just that, because that was fascinating.
Well, we're going to be doing one on the age of the Earth, aren't we?
Yes, that'll be good. But let's get back onto here about ghosts. Now, I'm saying the paranormal, I definitely believe, because
we both do.
Yeah,
we both do. But apparition is my problem. What's your strongest evidence? What is your one? I always love asking this question when you and I are arguing. Say, what is your best evidence that we can look at and then we can't contradict? What have you got for us?
The one for me is not necessarily seeing a ghost; it's hearing the ghost.
Hearing a ghost.
Yeah, not we hear it directly, but it's being picked up in electronic voice.
EVQs. Yeah. What are they calling it?
Just for the benefit of our listeners, it's called electronic voice phenomenon, and this is where
EVPs.
Yeah, and where their human voices are recorded on tape, so the sound is picked up. We humans are not picking it up at all. But the voices then appear on the same recordings alongside what we've said from no one else in the room.
Every time I've heard an EVP, it's been something that needs to be interpreted as being a voice saying something. I've never heard a clear-cut case of saying, go downstairs and turn off the gas.
Well,
Sorry?
It may not need to be that distinct.
Well, it's always grunts and things, and people say, oh, the voice said this, and I've listened and I've played it back off, and I can't make that. It requires interpretation. It's not clear-cut. What I'm saying to you now doesn't need interpretation because it's clear-cut. People can hear it for themselves. They don't need someone else to say, this is what's going on. But whenever I've heard an EVP, someone has always needed to be off camera or on camera, doesn't matter, saying, this is what the voice is saying. And I'm like, how do you know that? I can't hear that. All I hear is a grunt. And that, you brought it up. I was going to mention it before and I completely forgot. Thank you for bringing it up. This EVP thing is what makes me think that when creatures, dogs and cats and whatever, when they're looking into parts of a room and their hackles are raised and whatever, they are hearing stuff like this, which we can't hear.
Correct.
Yeah, so it doesn't make that a ghost, just makes that some kind of what do you call it now? Subdural, suboral. It just makes it a suboral sound. That's all. And most of these suboral sounds can be replicated. I mean, there was one I was watching. It was a show that debunks these things. Yeah. And they were perfectly able to show that it was when somebody flushed the toilet, several floors away. It triggered it.
Really?
It was phenomenal.
And so the debunkers are great because that's what the whole point of being there are. And they do come with some debunking ideas, which sound plausible. You think, oh yeah, it must be that. And easily dismissed. But some of them, it's always a few. Remember the Pareto rule, 80-20 rule. 80% you're right. 80% can be explained, debunked, etc. But there's always a smaller number that are harder to just dismiss and harder to just, say, no, that's not true.
I'd love you to show me one of these. It's because we all like a good story, and that's why I'm asking you, what's the best one where no one has been able to debunk it, and where the voice says something which is understandable by those of us listening, and we don't have to guess what the voice is saying.
There's one that I remember hearing that the voice was foreign. See, it doesn't have to be English. Why is it English? But it sounded foreign. It was like, where's that coming from? So that was picked up afterwards, and it was in the room when it was recorded. There was no one foreign speaking, no one else in the room, no one in the house. But this voice, the words were foreign. It was like, what?
Yes, foreign. What language?
Do you know what? I can't remember. I'll have to dig it up and I'll have to send it on. And if we can, we'll put it on our Facebook page for our listeners to comment and say what they believe it was or what was actually said.
Well, what do you remember the translation as being, if you don't remember what it was saying?
Oh, something like "not me" or something.
Okay, but you don't remember what language, unfortunately?
I think it may have been Spanish.
What does not mean in Spanish?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
Because if it's some kind of just ordinary sound rather than actually someone speaking, it could be because we had to say it was Spanish because that's the closest match. It's some kind of form of oral pareidolia.
Oh yeah, you said that again.
Yeah, it's like an oral one. Yeah, it's like making sense out of a sound, which in itself is just a sound. So if we could look at the waveform or something.
I've just seen it now. It's "yo no."
Yo no. Like that, right?
Yeah, similar to that. Yeah.
All right, so.
No, not quite that. It's
somebody yawning. Yeah.
Slow.
Yeah.
Slow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost something out of the original Ghostbusters. Zoo. Do you remember Zoo? The god of death or whatever it was.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, Tony. I think on this occasion, I'm gonna have to say you're gonna have to give me something. But this is exactly the problem with ghosts. This is why people don't believe in ghosts, because it's just like, well, what is it? Where is the? It's not
Where's
just
the
where is the evidence. Like, why isn't there a lot more of it? With all the cameras on, think about all the CCTV cameras. My goodness, if ghosts were real and apparitions and they could appear on camera, my goodness, we'll be flooded with them everywhere
But
because
maybe they don't appear
they
as
die
often as
everywhere.
we think.
Sorry.
That's why they don't appear as often as we think. It's only in rare occasions where they do manifest.
Yeah, that's a bit unbelievable because apart from apparitions, even speaking about the paranormal, there are genuine paranormal. I mean, I was involved in one, as I explained. There are genuine paranormal instances,
Yeah.
but they're not usually the kinds that lend themselves to anything but anecdotes. Unfortunately, how do you prove any of this stuff? I've got eyewitnesses, but we could all be lying if you like.
Yeah. No, I
So how,
agree.
how,
I
how would I
agree.
how would I prove it? It's very difficult to prove it.
Okay, so
But,
how many?
but one thing you didn't mention, which I'm surprised you didn't, because it's as if I'm doing your work for you on this episode. You never mentioned, or maybe, unless you don't know about it, healthcare workers know that end of life story is very, very similar. And there's a pattern.
Yeah.
It's not a 100% pattern, but it's enough that people can actually tell what's going on.
Yeah, I
My
do
wife is
know
in
about that,
healthcare.
but that's not really a ghost, is it? That's the pattern of them before a person dies, where they just finally get at peace.
It's
And
more than that. It's more than that. My wife tells it because she's attended so many. I mean, for I feel sorry for her, but she's perfectly okay with it.
yeah,
She's attended so many last moments of people, old care homes, old people's care homes,
yeah.
and she says I think she says the eyes are the first to go. It's the eyes or the sounds. I can't remember what
Not
order
the
it goes
sound.
in.
No, the sound is the last to go.
The sounds last to go.
Yeah.
But they look into a corner and they seem to recognize people.
My dad said the same when he passed.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't bring that up.
Well,
In the call, were you in the room when he
I was
passed?
in the. I was. No, he was seeing things at the window. But then
Interesting.
again, could that be? Could that have just been that his illness had just taken over and his sight wasn't the same? It was all images created in his mind. You see, we can make this association, but someone's dying because their body's breaking down. So someone at the end of their physical life, that is a breakdown of the body, isn't it? So all their senses, all their hearing, is it as sharp or as good as when they're healthy? I don't know. I mean, I'm not.
Yes, I don't know why why do they see figures of past? I mean, the objection to your objection is, why do they see figures of people who have passed? Why don't they see other things? Why don't they see happy times? Why don't they see people who are actually, say, next door? Why is it people who are past? And that's a very powerful objection, and I haven't heard a good answer to that yet.
Interesting. It is interesting.
Right.
I
And
mean,
what's his name? Steve Jobs.
yeah.
The last thing he said was intriguing. Are you aware of his last words,
No,
Steve
I'm
Jobs?
not. No, no. Please enlighten me.
He went, wow, oh, wow.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. That just made me
Yeah.
go, wow. If that was true, if those were his, that's not an urban myth, is that true? That's not made up, and he genuinely said that. Then now I'm going, wow. That's incredible.
I find it intriguing.
Indeed, indeed. But the thing is, okay, I mean, we're so I just want to wrap up with a couple of things. I mean, the paranormal stuff, which is more where I am believing, like
Mm-hmm.
voices and things, and the feelings where we're feeling something's not there or something is there. The way animals behave, the way the children behave. This points to it. It really does point to that ghosts, or the whole banner of ghosts, not necessarily the visual ones, do exist. So really, the topic that we're discussing today is true. Ghosts do exist, and you agree with me. You may disagree with the physical apparitions, but that's just one segment of it. I'm more sanguine about that. I think that there are instances where the image does manifest in a way that just as they're leaving, as you've quite eloquently put it, leaving the stage, they still look back and go, oh, I enjoyed my time while I was there, or trying to sneak in a quick final word to the previous actors and say, don't worry, you're doing a good job. I don't know, but something like that, so that the actors who are us, that we're still alive, are not, I don't know, we're acting, but we could act a bit better.
I think because I'm an English teacher, I'm very particular about words.
Right.
I would not be arguing, does the paranormal exist? We wouldn't have a show because there would be no argument. For me, a ghost is an apparition, and an apparition is a ghost. I don't believe that there's any other thing. There's no other interpretation that I'm willing to entertain. And I don't think it's just me. I should have done this earlier.
So it's a poltergeist, not a ghost?
No, it's a poltergeist. That's why that's why we have a
different word. Yeah, but we're describing.
I'm looking at the Oxford English Dictionary, and ghost, noun, an apparition of a dead person which is believed to appear or become manifest.
Right.
See? So for me, that's my problem. That straight away, I just, ghost, that's just an apparition.
Oh, I see. And definitely looked at it as an apparition as opposed to ghosts, paranormal entities.
Paranormals, I'm happy with that. The paranormal, does exist. That all sorts of things that can't be explained. Very difficult because they don't lend themselves to being recorded. I mean, my understanding of poltergeist is that it's actually usually attached to a living child. But we've never had that proven in a laboratory that any living child has the power of telekinesis. So that's another hard sell. These things are hard. It's really, really hard. But do I believe there's no such thing as poltergeism, if that's a word, which I wonder? Mm-hmm. I tend to believe that there are poltergeists, which are children, not spirits, or malevolent entities, disincarnate entities. I tend to believe that it's prepubescent or adolescent children, usually newly adolescent, just about 12, 13, 14, something like that. And there are issues, but I can't prove it, and I have not seen anyone else prove it. It's just something that seems to be a pattern. But why then don't we have it on camera? I mean, nowadays we should really have to capture these things because everybody's got a phone camera.
Yeah. But the thing is, they're talking about the camera bit. The phone cameras are great. However, we always have this scenario now where we're freeze, fight, or flight. So, we've often said, oh, you fight or flight response. They've actually missed one out there. There's fight, flight, or freeze. And the freeze isn't spoken about very often. And most people believe it's just fight or flight. It's actually the third one as well, freeze. And that is also very common. So when you're confronted with a genuinely fearful situation, one of the responses is one of the three. And freezing is very common. So even though you think, I would whip out my phone and turn it on and take the photo, you're not doing that. You wouldn't do that. Even with the phone in your hand, the situation just takes you by surprise and doesn't give you the presence of mind to actually start recording. And that seems to be the problem with a lot of people. I mean, I mentioned to you briefly before about my son seeing something in the sky which was unexplained. He had a similar example beforehand. And I said, why didn't you take your phone out? He goes, because I was so surprised to see it, I didn't think about doing that.
So the thing about poltergeist is that it's more like a haunting in the sense that it's not usually a one-off. I mean, this is the traditional classic poltergeist activity now I'm talking about, where it affects a family over a period of time.
Yeah.
Now you think that you could set up cameras because you're expecting it to happen. Even just leave your webcam on, for goodness sakes.
But that does happen, though. That's how a lot of these are captured, because of static cameras that have been there over a period of time.
Yeah, my problem is when I've seen them, There was one about the kitchen and things were flying around the kitchen.
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
it's more, yeah, it's ridiculous. You can tell that it's a hoax. So we're the ones that are
How can you
more,
tell? That's quite a dismissive.
because it jerks, and then if it acts exactly the way it would do if you jerked it on a string. It doesn't act like the reports of a poltergeist activity. The reports of a poltergeist activity are doors which close themselves. Now I did see one actually, and that was more believable. No, I don't know if I believe it, and the reason why I just go. The reason why I dismissed it is because there was no child in the house. But what it was that according to the uploader, the he was coming back home and finding things displaced, and he thought it was the dogs doing it. So he left his camera. He left his camera
Just to see.
just to see. And the first thing we did, there's a German Shepherd on a sofa, and then with its head on its front paws, and then its head snaps up, and it looks towards the door. And as it looks towards the door just slowly shuts. Now that's impressive because number one, the camera didn't move around. A lot of times I dismiss things because the camera follows the action, and supposedly no one was there.
Yeah. That's silly.
So that's nonsense, right? But this was just a static picture. We saw the dog look up, snap awake or whatever, look towards the door, and then slowly shut. And I don't know how. I mean, unless maybe the guy stayed home and they came up. But if the guy had stayed home, the dog would have jumped to its feet or something.
Yeah. Would have sensed the person being there and gone out. Yes, correct.
Precisely. So that was interesting. I put it down as, okay, that's interesting. But that's like the only one I can think of.
No, there's quite a few. There are quite a few. I'll have to dig them out and I'll have to send them over. In fact, I'll put them all on our site so that our listeners can comment as well on what they believe are true or not, or whether they're fake. So that'd be great. We have reached the end of the show for another week.